Conor Krausert, and we'll start off as far east as we go. The Montreal Canadiens, after finding a way into the playoffs, probably a little bit ahead of schedule. Andrew, how do you feel after having a little bit of hindsight now after that matchup with the Caps?
I think it was a really good learning experience for that team. I think that they realized very quickly that the rules are different in the playoffs and that you probably aren't going to get your way if you just play your way through it. You have to bite back a little bit. And that's an important lesson for a lot of those players. But I think they also realized that they could hang with a team that should have been able to beat them much easier than they did. The Capitals may have won the series, but on balance, they didn't outplay the Canadiens. They were outplayed. There was a goaltending mismatch, especially after the Canadiens lost Montembeault, and Logan Thompson was spectacular. And the Capitals were very opportunistic, absolutely. But the Canadiens, on balance, outplayed them. And that was impressive to me because this team shouldn't even be in the playoffs, frankly. They didn't have a second line center, they didn't have a second line. They had a first line that could meet up with good competition and proved in that series that they were the best line in the series. And they had two good third lines with trios that worked. But there was no second line, and teams shouldn't make the playoffs in the NHL with no second line.
And
It's wild that they were able to do that. I was very impressed. So it made me hopeful for what could come next. And I think that they will come out of that series not that disappointed because they weren't expected to win. They'll come out thinking, "Oh, we're close. We're closer than we actually thought." And they were confident coming into the year, fell flat out of the gate, and everyone was like, "Ah, disaster." And they from that they managed to make the playoffs. It was a spectacular job. And now to add to it in the off season already to foreshadow.
yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But there is a very few, probably a zero number of teams that can say they had two rookies of the year on their squad. Of course, I'm talking first about Ivan Demidov, who joins in late, gets the rookie of the year in the KHL. I think he's kind of unheralded just due to the strange circumstances around him getting to North America and didn't really add in the playoffs. But this is a player that came in with what, 3 games left in the regular season, if my brain's remembering correctly, to try and expect that to be lead to contribution in a postseason series against Alexander Ovechkin and co. I think is unfair expectations placed upon a young player in his first time playing on NHL sized ice.
100%. And at the same time, with no situation at even strength to put him in to benefit his skill set.
Yeah.
Because it sounds good in like an NHL video game to have Patrick Laine with Ivan Demidov at even strength. Like the playmaking, the shooting, it'll work. But they didn't have a center that would be able to carry those two defensively in the playoffs, right? So you've got a really young rookie who has almost no NHL experience. But yes, KHL, yes, but the NHL is different. Smaller ice, more physical. Like it's just a different game. And then you've got Liney on the other side who's already injured and kind of, you know, not great defensively at the best of times. Is not a great situation for the
No.
rookie. What I was impressed with Demidov for in his short NHL stint was, yeah, getting his first goal and everything in the regular season, but from the beginning of the series against Washington to the end, he went from one of the lowest impact players to one of the highest impact players, at least on the offensive side. He was not overwhelmed, I would say, at the beginning, but like I said, not put in a position to succeed. And then despite that, he kind of worked his way up and found a way onto the power play. And from there, he got confidence. And that translated through at even strength to the point when the Canadians were trailing at the end. They were breaking up lines that had already worked to get Demidov more ice time in a situation where he could create some scoring chances. And that, to get that kind of trust in the playoffs at that age, as a guy who has a reputation for maybe not being the most amazing defensively and also in a new situation, I was really impressed with him.
Yeah, and then of course the other rookie of the year, Lane Hudson, like obviously I'm a little being the Flames host, a little sad that Dustin Wolf wasn't a little bit bigger competition for Lane. But he also took a step forward in the playoffs, and you can see we're going to foreshadow again a little bit more investment to get someone to play with him moving forward.
Yes, big time. Lane Hudson, yes. It's hard to even describe how impressive he was this season. And I totally agree with you on Dustin Wolf, honestly. I think we all know why, right? It all matters.
Defender versus goaltender, playoffs, non-playoffs.
Exactly, right? It's the same situation as Ginla versus Theodore so many years ago, right? So the way that these things are voted on are wild and not always based on merit, but it was a season where multiple players could have been legitimate rookies of the year, maybe even 4 of them, right? I think what Lane Hudson did and what Dustin Wolf did are more rare than what the young forwards did.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lane Hudson blew me away this year. Beginning of the season, and I was very high on Hudson. He's probably the last Canadiens prospect that I saw drafted that I was like all in on. Like, this kid, if he hits, is going to be a star. And I thought like he had hit. And in the beginning, I was like, but this year, probably third pairing guy, right? Like, he's got a lot to work on. And that's kind of where he started out. And it was like 10 games in, he's playing 22 minutes a night. And by the end of the season, he's getting games where he's leading the team in ice time, like over Mike Matheson, who has the cardio and physical ability to play like 28 and not break a sweat. Like, it was unbelievable what Lane Hudson was able to accomplish this year. And to be expected to be a defensive liability due to size, from the beginning of the season to the end of the playoffs, he went from, a bit of a defensive liability, figuring things out, to very reliable defensively, like extremely good at executing his proficiencies in the defensive zone to turn the tide and not have to face the issues that are more challenging to him, like being in front of the net. Like, you don't have to be in front of the net in battle if you never let them get into that situation. And he was excellent at it. He was excellent at breaking out of forechecks. Like, I'm so impressed with his maneuverability. I've never seen a player so agile on their feet. I think the comparisons to Patrick Kane on the ice only, hopefully, are accurate in a way, but I think he's even more elusive. I've never seen a guy this quick. As someone who I train boxing, which is so much of boxing is about the quick movement in small doses, like very, very quick, sudden movements that shift your body around to like psych out opponents or dodge and weave this way and that. Lane Hudson would be a spectacular boxer. I have never seen somebody so capable of throwing off NHL quality players from a situation that makes no sense. Like, he's stuck in the corner and like 2 guys coming in and he just like shimmy shakes and goes right through them. And they're like, what? It's unbelievable. His creativity is top notch. Somebody was joking earlier that, Calder this year, Norris next. And I was like, probably not, but I didn't expect him to win the Calder this year either. And I was one of his biggest boosters. So who knows? Maybe. The kid's crazy.
So that takes us through the offseason into draft night. And of course, Montreal enters with back-to-back picks, not quite the Sedin level 3rd, 4th back-to-back, but they elect not to use either of them. In fact, they decide, we'll get a player that can impact our window way sooner than any draft pick. They trade 16 and 17 to the Islanders in exchange for Noah Dobson. Immediate thoughts, of course, we are assuming we'll pair up with Hudson, but this is a huge move for the Canadiens.
Absolutely.
And you're welcome, by the way.
Yeah.
One of those picks, obviously, was Calgary's pick from back when you acquired Sean Monahan.
Yes, that was the being paid to take Sean Monahan, who was then excellent as both a player and a mentor for the young players here, and then revived his career, which was beautiful to see. He was phenomenal this year in Columbus. Like,
Yes.
I don't think anybody who has watched Sean Monahan on like a team that they're covering or cheering for dislikes Sean Monahan. Like, talking to Flames fans, like, they all love him. There's something about that guy. He's got something, and I like him a lot. And I'm so glad to see his continued health and success.
100%.
But to get paid for it and then turn that into Noah Dobson is pretty wild.
Yeah, like just kind of exactly the guy you need to keep this window as far open as you can. Obviously, it's a tough slog. You still will likely have to go through Alexander Ovechkin at least for one more year and the Caps, and then who knows what comes out of the Eastern Conference. But to go from a team at the start of the year where you were wondering where the power play is going to go, to go now into where Noah Dobson probably won't even run your power play one. That's probably Hudson's to headman.
Yep.
But to have those be your 2 point operators moving forward, it's obviously a bounty to have as a Canadiens fan.
Yeah, and it kind of silences any question of what the Canadians were planning to do going forward. Were they going to say like, "Oh, well, that was a good progress year. Let's see how it goes next year," and like kind of slow roll it again and see like bank some picks and some more prospects and keep the rebuild going, or were they going to go not let's say all in, but push forward? And they didn't wait. Not even until free agency.
No.
Not even until the draft. They made the move that's going to put things forward and make them expected to make the playoffs next year. So now it's not just that was fun last year. Now it's all right. Let's go ahead. Let's move forward. We got to get back there again. That's the expectation. And Noah Dobson, what an incredible ad to do that, because not only does Dobson allow them to shift everybody down a little bit into a better spot on like the ice time allotment, to, the role, etc. He also gives them a guy who's incredibly strong at even strength and on the power play on the right side, which they did not have. So they can change their power play setups between 1 and 2, put everybody in a good situation, right?
Yeah.
And it allows them to play Caden Gooley on the left side all the time, which they have not been able to do because they are overstacked on the left and understaffed a little bit on the right. Caden Gooley is, in my opinion, already a number 2 defenseman in the NHL. He's just overtasked with playing off his side, and he has had some injury issues.
Yeah.
And once he's now down in a situation where he's tasked to do less because Noah Dobson's there, and he's able to play on his own side, it's going to be very tough to play against Caden Gooley, especially when now he's likely to have a player of the caliber of Alexander Carrier on his side, right side, sorry. So the Canadiens are very deep all of a sudden on defense. And, if Gooley plays with Dobson also, that's something that can happen. So there's a lot that could happen with this defense. They have a lot of versatility. Their entire top 4 are both proficient offensively and defensively now, which is good. Like, Alexander Carrier is not, I wouldn't call him proficient. I'd say competent. Like, he's not going to kill plays. He's very good at keeping plays alive. He's good at getting the puck out of the zone as well. So he's good at moving the puck up the ice. He's a good transition player.
Yeah.
He's not a defense-only guy, is my point.
He's
Same
no
with
Robin Regeer to put my
Exactly.
Calgary bias into everything.
Exactly. So the Canadiens, the defense now it's gone in one move from good with like a really strong future, especially with David Reinbacher now, who no longer has to be rushed into the NHL in any sort of way. There's no pressure on him. You've got a very strong top 4 now relative to most of the NHL. That's impressive work.
To go from okay to a threat in a single off season, I haven't seen that since the summer of Brad. But anyways, we're not going to go pick by pick, but the Canadiens certainly did take a little bit more of a swing selecting out of the MHL and then a couple of WHL guys. What did you think overall of the later rounds for the Canadiens? Kind of lottery balls at best is the way I looked at it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the Canadiens' strategy with a lot of the picks that they've made is they identify something that they want, right? Like they're looking for a specific kind of player and somebody who can fit into their team culture. They're very extensive in their interviews. You know, some of their questions are very weird, in my opinion. Like when they asked David Reinbacher uh, some question about like what he would have done in World War II, it was very weird.
Yeah, that was one of the stranger ones.
Yeah, but they seem to do a good job of identifying players who fit into slots that they're building for their team, right? Like they also have a very strong development team that I haven't seen as a person who's covered the Canadians my whole life. Like they're just not a good developmental program team. But they've changed that very quickly. They've found ways to make players, even NHL players, develop into better players. Josh Anderson had a renaissance season. You know, like it's crazy. So I think they're in a position where they have a very strong system and they can now afford to roll the dice on skills in later rounds that they think could benefit them long term. And they have the confidence to try to develop that. And I like a big swing. You know, I don't know a ton about the prospects in this draft, I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the Canadians are in a position where they can try some weird stuff. And based on their track record so far in this short rebuild that they've supercharged, they've kind of earned my trust.
And I think that totally makes sense looking from the outside. But now let's look to free agency that starts today as of we're posting this. What are the team's needs? Let's maybe give a couple ideas of the type and maybe one player that you're looking with heart-shaped eyes at in free
Well,
agency.
I don't know if there's a good situation in free agency for the Canadians, but they do need to address the center position. They're going to lose Christian Dvorak in this offseason. They're going to lose, well, they're not going to lose, but I don't think that they can rely on Kirby Doc to be a second line center next season just based on the fact that he's coming back from injuring the same knee as he came back from last time. And he had a tough time, I think, mentally getting over, like being comfortable on that knee and putting him in situations that make him Kirby Doc the player. He's a very rough and tumble player. He likes getting involved in the board, along the boards. He likes battling for pucks, and he just wasn't able to do that. He didn't have the confidence in his knee, and then he hurt that same knee again. So it like that should justify in his brain that he shouldn't have confidence in that knee, right? So I don't know if the Canadians should trust him to make that way back in a single season. I think that's a lot to expect of him. If he does, it would be amazing. But as a team, I think they need to address the center position. I don't know if there's a free agent situation that makes sense. I think it might have to be another trade. I'm not sure if it's possible, but I still think the Canadians should be looking at Pittsburgh and asking about their future and what they need, because they're in for a dark period here as they rebuild. They have
Sorry,
almost
Marc.
no assets, and it's gonna be a tough time if they don't sell. I think I would knock on the door for Pittsburgh for one of those top two guys.
So you're saying that there may be smoke to that kind of ever-present rumor of 87 coming out east somewhere if you had your way.
I'm saying that it makes sense for Sid and the Penguins to make that trade. I think there's two two places that Sidney Crosby would accept a trade to, and that's Colorado to play with Nathan McKinnon. And Colorado just straight up doesn't have the assets to like that make sense for Pittsburgh. So that doesn't make sense for them. Or Montreal, his boyhood team. And I think the sell's very easy for Montreal to make. They say, Sid, you've accomplished everything in your career. You are like a surefire Hall of Famer, first ballot forever. But wouldn't you like to put the cherry on top by bringing a 25th Stanley Cup banner to Montreal, your home team, the team you grew up cheering for as a kid? And I think the sell would be pretty easy. I think he would do it, and I think the Canadiens have the assets to make it maybe not worthwhile for Pittsburgh like optically, but worthwhile monetarily and to build some future assets to speed up the dark period they're about to enter, because it's going to be tough to sell seats.
So that's sitting down with Andrew Berkshire and addressing the Montreal Canadiens offseason. Andrew, thank you so much, and we'll probably talk to you again before the NHL season starts ramping back up once again in too short of a time.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.